Good afternoon, everybody. Friends, listeners, supporters, enemies. Dobry den. Salam alaikum. It's wonderful to meet you all. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. And please put a penny in the old pastor's hat, because I haven't been this poor in ages, but I'm rich in the company I'm keeping today. This is the second broadcast for Art of Liberty. These, in so many ways, are dark and depressing times. I mean, astronomically, they're dark times. You know, we're coming up to the longest night of the year before we celebrate the light being reborn in Islam, in Judaism and Christianity, in the pagan traditions. So we all have a winter festival we're looking forward to. And I'm already blessed by a sudden insurgence of light by a number of guests who are joining me today to talk about an art object, a book, a poem, a play, a concretized presence that has allowed them to have a greater sense of freedom and liberty. What we're going to do is work through the screen one by one, and I'm going to start with my wonderful friend, Christine Ellerbeck. My God, careful viewers. She was the bad girl back in Bird on a Wire, Bird in a Feather.
Oh, Birds of a Feather, yes.
Birds of a Feather. She was the proper bad girl in it years ago. I happen to know she's nothing like that in practice. She's an absolute gorgeous, sweetie, a lovely person. But who knows what she'll unveil before us today. Christine, darling, lovely to see you. What gave you a greater sense of freedom?
As I said, it's very difficult to pin any one thing down. One's had, one's been on stage and one's been, exposed as a actor and writer to all sorts of ideas and freedoms. But the thing that I chose today was Rhapsody in Blue by Gershwin. Now, the reason why I've chosen it is, obviously, I'm playing piano and I love it, but he wrote that when he was it was one of those wonderful things. He had a commission that he was working on, and he was asked to write for this enormous concert in New York, something a symphonic, and he was like, oh yeah, of course I will. And then something happened. It got put into the New York Times that he was doing this big extravaganza, and he thought, right, I better get down and get something done. So he then wrote Rhapsody in Blue. And what was so marvelous for me about it is it's completely just shifts from he broke all the ties of how classical music should be from the European point of view. I mean, we think of Bach and Liszt and all that Eastern European that came up that was so developed. He made it so American, and he also broke the chains of the rules of how jazz should be played, how the blues should be played. He just broke all the rules when he wrote it. And of course, it was a huge, massive hit. A lot of people said, well, it's full of this. It doesn't follow that line. It doesn't follow that line. It should have done this. And he just said, up yours, because this is what I've written. And of course, the rest is history. It's an amazing piece of music. Every time I hear it, it goes, from that beginning bit, along with lots of other stuff. But I just felt, because it was so different to lots of music, because he was a Tin Pan Alley man. He did the blues, and he went into the realms of like, well, I'm now going to write something like a symphonic piece. And it's brilliant. And it did break a lot of rules, and anything that breaks rules, anything that takes something further, for me, is always going to be in my heart, and something that's always going to make me go like that and inspire me. So I think, gosh, I mean, where do you start with all the wonderful music? So that's why I chose Rhapsody in Blues, because it did break a lot of boundaries for classical, for jazz, for blues, and it invented a whole new kind of American style of music that we now is obviously international and that we love. So
George Gershwin, what an international treasure, Christine.
I know.
I mean, I need to say to all of our friends who are going to watch this and listen to this, Christine is also the author of a remarkable pantomime I went to see a couple of years ago now called Bad Cinderella, where she played Lady Muck. And I'm hoping
I was a
that's revived.
dominatrix. It
Well,
was a mad panto, darling.
Oh, it was the best fun I've had in a theatre for years, and it was a real panto. It was bawdy, but it was also very, very family friendly. It was absolute fun, and I hope you're doing it again, because I'm putting pressure on you now, because it's great. The script was great, your performance was great, and we need more fun in the world at the moment.
We do.
Definitely.
It was fun.
Oh, thank you, Christine.
You're
Moving
welcome.
up the screen to another good friend of mine, Bakhtygul, as I've said, if you haven't met her before at the various Central Asian bashes I go to, is an international literary agent, amongst other things. So she's potentially got about 100,000 people to talk about, and I'm wagging my finger now, young lady. One person. Bakhtygul, say something about yourself and who you want to talk about today.
Thank you for this opportunity again, David, Daniele. Thank you for everyone. Really, it is a great chance for everyone to be a part of this wonderful, great, platform. It is not just only platform. It is a kind of world where we can share only good feelings, the thoughts of the goodness and kindness and the love. And the theme is liberty, the theme is freedom. I think what we need is the freedom of thoughts. And today I'm going to talk about the person whose name is really interconnected with the word liberty, with the word freedom. It is Abay. Previous meeting I presented the research work of Professor Mikentas Mirzahmet, his research work based on the doctrine by Abay, and it is really interesting for me to pay attention to the ideas of the biologists, because it is absolutely difficult to understand the inner world of the great Kazakh poet if we don't pay attention to the helpful instructions of the scientists, because Abay is a very puzzled person. As his poem is presented here, look deep into your soul and ponder on my words. To you, I'm a puzzle, my person, my verse. My life has been a struggle, 1,000 furrows I paved. Don't judge me too severely, for you the way I paved. This is the just one part of the poem by that great poet. Opens us that system that he needs to be understood by people a bit specifically, and his specific peculiarities connected with his, unique features as a big human. And today I'm going to talk about one more.
We seem to have lost the connection with Kazakhstan. That is not good.
It is this book. It is Kazakh, but as I am as the first literary agent in Kazakhstan, these days I might name myself as an international literary agent, as David accented on this function. And I'm planning to translate this manual. It is really manual. It is really very good handbook for the people who would like to taste that puzzled world of the great Kazakh poet Abay Kunanbayev. What is that book about? This book is the instruction book how well you can understand the world of Abay. It consists of 3 parts. By the way, the book is very big, 680 pages. David, 680 pages. We are going to translate and edit and, the job is going to be presented to us. And the first part of the book is Abay's East, East side. What do we mean by East? We know that Abay knew Arabic, Persian, and the old Turkic languages, and he was interested in all possible old important books of the scientists, and he was very good at them, and he tried to understand all those things, and he tried to explain to the people, to his surrounding, what he received from those resources. And the second part, in Kazakhstan, there is a city, very old historic city. David knows that city. It is Turkestan. And in that city, there is the very old mosque that dedicated to the historic leader of the Turkic culture, Hoca Ahmed Yesavi. And Abay also was very interested in the philosophy of that great leader of the Turkic world, Hoca Ahmed Yesavi, and Mirkentas Mirzahmet tried to open all the interconnections of Abay and the Yesavi in the second part. And the third part is I think the key for everyone, because in Abay's poetry, in Abay's Book of Wisdom, we can find out very many interesting ideas that might be not easy to catch up and just at once from your first very reading. It needs to be explained. It needs to be instructed. And Professor Mirkentas Mirzahmet did his best to cope with all those puzzle directions. And every person who wants to taste Abay, first of all, I think should get that manual, should get that guidebook, we can say, should be aware of all those puzzle sides of the poetic world of Abay, and then can see the real big pleasure of the inner world of Kazakh nature, because Abay is Kazakh. Abay is the leader of the whole Turkic world, and the doctrine of his, from his presentation, the holistic man, is not only presented to the not only to the Kazakh people, but it is to the all mankind. You see, and I'm very proud of that. I am presented that opportunity to talk about Abay, because this year was the great year for the world, because we enjoyed the celebration of the poet's 175th anniversary, and there have been presented very many interesting events. All his books, and the other interesting events were presented to the attention of the world. I'm very sure that the world might be very pleased with having this book in many other languages, not only English. And now I'm just thinking hard how well I might cope with this big task for me right now, especially to find out possible ways, possible solutions to make the world be happy with our wonderful, great Kazakh poet Abay Kutambayev.
Oh,
thank you for your attention.
Oh, thank you, Bakhtygul. If any of you listeners, viewers, watchers don't know the great poet Abay, he was a remarkable man. He set up reading circles amongst the nomads and was chasing them through the works of Goethe, amongst others. You know, a remarkable individual. So is Bakhtygul. I mean, at the risk of sounding unpatriotic, she's a lady in a man's job in a part of the world which doesn't always appreciate ladies in men's jobs. So she's very brave. She has our complete support. She's doing a job of international importance, and we're very, very honored and lucky to have her as part of our group. Thank you, Bakhtygul.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
John Allison, if you're looking for trouble, matey, you've come to the right place. John is becoming a new friend of mine very, very rapidly. He's someone I have a great deal of respect for. Not only is he an ex-serviceman, he does incredible charitable works. When he's not fighting polar bears hand to hand in the tundra, he's actually trying to make the world a very better place, and he's visiting us in Valentine's Hall next year to hold a couple of workshops with us. And it is a privilege to have you on the show, John. I hope you'll join us again at some point. Would you tell us a bit about yourself and the art, object, or experience that brings you here today?
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. And again, I'm delighted to be working with so many amazing people from around the world. It's incredible. So yes, I'm John Watson Allison, and I served for 24 years in the British Army, everything from bomb disposal to military engineering and all sorts of things. And most of my work now is about trying to help people to empower themselves. And I do a lot of that work through things, as David said, motion to mind or street gym. And I'm also doing some work at the moment trying to launch a global challenge for the homeless and in support of homelessness, and that's called Under a Tarp Challenge. Anyway, so my work is all centered around how we can help people to empower themselves, and you'll see that the book that I've chosen today relates to a lot of that. I think these days that there's too much emphasis on consumerism and having to buy your way into happiness, and to me that's really disempowering, because quite often, you know, we'll buy something and then the novelty quickly wears off and we realize there's a big hole in our bank account or our wallet. And you know, and if people feel that they can only achieve happiness through consumerism, then it's not really a recipe for long-term happiness or success. And really, in brief, this is a book that I came across. A friend of mine recommended it to me. It's called The Second Meadow by a guy called Archie Hill. And I've never heard of the guy, but it's a really, really interesting chap. He had a very, very difficult childhood in the black country, sort of West Midlands, Birmingham way, here in the UK. And sadly, I didn't realize, but he actually ended up committing suicide, unfortunately. But he wrote a number of books, and this is an amazing book. And what I like about it is that Archie Hill was clearly a very, very rough diamond. And however, he was an amazing author, and the way he uses words is incredible. And The Second Meadow is actually this Archie Hill's story about how he went and lived in the woods for several months, just living in a tent and washing in streams. But for me, what I love about his work is, you know, I love being outdoors in nature. For me, again, it's deeply empowering. I can you know, talk about lockdown, but I'm here in Hertfordshire, and I'm surrounded by thousands of acres of woodland, which is I'm free to roam. And what I like about Archie's work is essentially that the way he speaks about nature is remarkable. He really takes you deeply into the woods and deeply into the sound and the smells and the sights of nature. This book is like going on a little journey, a little holiday without leaving the comfort of your armchair. But also for me, he takes it into a more of a sort of spiritual level, and he uses nature as a form of guide. So at one point he talks about how many of us live in the first meadow, and that's the meadow of social norms and social convention. And few of us dare to venture beyond the first meadow, because the first meadow is a safe place. But essentially, you know, he talks about looking at nature and how animals and insects and birds actually frequently, you know, venture beyond the first meadow. And he talks about the safety and convention. The mass of us are first meadow dwellers. Only a few range into the second meadow, and fewer still into the third, the meadows of mental and spiritual experience. And I really like that. So this is, for me, this is a book not only about the power of nature and how nature can enrich our lives for free, but also talks about it in terms of, you know, of mental and spiritual and emotional as well, which is really powerful. And all this from a guy who came from a really troubled childhood, a remarkable character.
Oh gosh, thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, I mean, I'm as a minister of the gospel, I'm having a number of strange experiences at the moment. Christine appears to be glowing intermittently at the bottom of my screen, which is managing to put me off. It's your dazzling personality, darling. I know we've got to do something on stage. Apart from being a minister of the gospel, I suppose I've got to put my awful political cards on the table. Not that it has much bearing on this particular type of meeting. I'm actually the culture officer for the Libertarian Party UK. They're partly going along with this. And I'm saying that for one reason, apart to boost some libertarians. I mean, let's face it, if things keep going in this direction, we'll all be in the same gulag anyway, so we might as well get to know each other. I'm introducing you to my fellow conspirator as we go up the screen before we get to my friend Lowell. That there, Gerrie Skeens. Oh, if I had a pound coin for all the gossip I could spread. All I can say is she's a remarkable person on a number of levels. She's even as gifted as Christine. I'm sorry, Christine, you know I love you, but you're not the only one. I'm that sort of guy. What can I say?
I hope not.
She's an equally talented actress.
The more, the merrier.
Oh, do you know we do, and we need more meaty female parts. Do you know that's been the one thing during the lockdown that was sort of haunting me was not only the fact us theatrical types need to do a lot more active theatre next year, but I can't really put my finger on more than 5 parts, decent parts for a woman that I've ever come across. We all need a chinwag about that at some point. But Gerrie, darling, apart from being the man, apart from dealing with Victor Sobchak, our brilliantly gifted impresario and friend, and telling off, was it Baron or Count Karenin in Anna Karenina that I'll never forget? Gerrie gave him short shrift and told him what she thought of him. So that the husband of Anna Karenina now knows where he stands. Gerrie, darling, what do you want to talk about and share with us today?
Well, first of all, may I say it's lovely to be here, and thank you for that introduction, I think. I am not entirely, am I a co-conspirator? Maybe. But I do want to say straight off the bat to Christine, oh my God, I am such a panto girl. Love panto. And what's more, I have actually written a song, a very naughty song for a Cinderella panto. So if you ever do it again, I'm going to insist you shoehorn it in somewhere.
Oh, that would be lovely. I've got lots of naughty songs in there, but more would be merrier.
It's a short one. It's audience participation. And anyway, so I have chosen this. I've chosen a book, partly because I do write a lot, sketches and all sorts of things. And I've actually written a children's novel ages ago. I wrote it ages ago. I still need to edit it. But why I'm going to mention this book is it popped into my head again last night, bizarrely, because my daughter was asking me, what were your favorite books, Mum? I'm trying to buy a book for a friend of mine. What affected you when you were younger? Well, my favorite children's book definitely was The Hobbit, I think. But as a young adult, I think there was a book by somebody called J.P. Donlevy called The Beastly Beatitudes of Balthazar B. And I don't know when it came out. I think it was probably early 70s or late 60s or something. I think I got to it in the early 80s. And I think he's Irish American. And it was this sort of very funny book, but also sad and also tragic and sad and almost elegiac. And it was sort of pretty poetical in ways. And the thing that struck me about it was, I mean, it was, I'll give you a 2-second synopsis of it if I can, I'm even less technical than David, but I think I can manage it. He's called Balthazar B, and his final name's never revealed, and he's born to riches in Paris. His father dies when he's young, and his mother neglects him for all her lovers. So his nanny relies on male advice and sends him to England, to a British boarding school when he's very young, and he makes friends with this guy called Beefy, who's similarly displaced and exceedingly naughty and is finally expelled. At 12, Balthazar is initiated sexually by his 24-year-old nanny. And you can imagine, you know, that's how irreverent it is in general. And after World War II, he goes back to England and ends up at Trinity. Then he ends up at Trinity College, Dublin. And he and his friend Beefy are both sent down. And the thing that I loved about it, I mean, it was a complete revelation to me, because it was the manner, it was the way it is written. It was so different. It was utterly different from anything I'd read. It had minimal punctuation, strings of bits of sentences. The tenses shifted. They changed it from third-person narrative to first-person stream of consciousness, and it was hysterically funny as well as being, as I say, very sad. And what I loved about it was, because I think it's going to sound awful, and I apologize in advance for saying it, but I've always felt a bit different. I felt a bit different growing up. I was always at odds with everyone. I didn't really felt I fit in. I couldn't really understand why. And the way that this was written just appealed to me because it was so different and all over the place. And I think I've spent most of my life feeling confused. And this just made me realize that because when I write things, they're not always straightforward in any way. And this sort of was the beginning of allowing me to be me, to write like I wanted to be, that it was okay to be a bit different and quirky. And that was the experience that I had with this book. And I think it just sort of released me a little bit. Plus, it was thoroughly entertaining. Apparently, I've just read that in 2012, they were thinking of making it into a film. Oh. So I don't know, but it was a standout. It was a standout book at the time for me. And I don't know whether I've got anything else to say on the subject.
That is more than wonderful, Gerrie. Thank you. I haven't quite got over your shameless audition for Christine yet. I'll have to have a reviving cup of coffee after that. Absolutely shameless, but wonderful at the same time.
But I have to say, David, pantos can have good parts for girls.
I've got a terrible confession to admit. I've always wanted to play Ebenezer, but that will come true one day, I hope. Last but never least, we're joined from Jerusalem by my dear friend Lowell Joseph-Gallin. We were recently on a show together, Leo Zagami's show. I think it was a tiny bit conspiratorial, so that links in with you and me, Gerrie. But it actually turned into this sort of minor tour de force, exploring issues, and I sort of teamed up with Lowell amongst the others. And we were joined by Roseanne Barr of all things. So it was a laugh. It was great fun. And Lowell and I got to know each other a little, and I'm privileged to have him on the show now. So you see what an international audience this is?
Yes.
Lowell, my dear friend, what art object inspired you?
Is he there?
He's there.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Hello from Jerusalem. And ladies and gentlemen, let's see, Bakhtygul, you're from Alma-Ata? Yes, and Geraldine from England's green and sunny land?
Oh dear, neither at the moment, neither at the moment.
And John and Christine, Christine from Germany?
No, not this Christine. This Christine's from Hackney, London. Running in Pagan by the sea.
John, where are you from? Where are you?
I'm in Hertfordshire, but I've been to Jerusalem on a few occasions. Yeah.
So 3 of you are in England, 4 of you are in England, and 1 of us is in Jerusalem and Alma-Ata. So I'm very glad to see you all. Also, this really isn't the place I should say it, but I have good news for you, Leo. I asked Roseanne about the other day, would you like to restart the show? And she said yes.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. Wonderful.
I don't believe in, there's an expression, you don't have the deal until the check clears the bank. So I should really put that privately, because until we air, it didn't happen. But when Roseanne said, yes, I'd love it, that means very shortly we'll be back on. And remember, our first program with Roseanne was actually at this Hanukkah Christmas time last year. So we'll be starting again. I didn't answer her yet about okay, when, where, etc. But we will be on the air. Favorite art objects. Wait a second. Song, picture, the dance, and which of the 5 senses?
Oh, Lowell, just choose one, because I hope you'll be a regular on the show. I hope you'll all visit me again at some point, but just one art object per session.
One object in any medium. Well, I would agree with Geraldine in terms of, if we're talking about books. The Hobbit.
Lowell, can you call me Gerrie?
Yes, Gerrie, of course.
Thanks. Thank you.
The Hobbit, for me, Tolkien is like when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the Torah, Tolkien was right behind with the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. And for me, it's like, well, he was asked once, where are you getting these ideas? Is there some prophetic element here? And he said, yes. When he took 11 years to write the Lord of the Rings, and he wasn't one of those people like Ernest Hemingway, I'm writing 500 words a day, no matter what. That's one way to do it. He worked on a prophecy, Holy Spirit. There were months, nothing. He didn't write anything. Then the Spirit's talking to me. And apparently he would, after the kids were put to bed and his work for Oxford was done, he would sit at his typewriter at a desk through a window in their suburban home, which wasn't one of these beautiful homes that David William puts on his Facebook page that we all want to live in or be invited to. It was a bland suburban on the outside home. You didn't know who was in. It was J.R. Tolkien, who was a national, international, intergalactic, and interdimensional icon. And then he would type. So for me, in terms of nature, one commentator on Tolkien said for Tolkien, nature was a character. It was not just nature. Nature was, with a capital N, alive. The trees were alive, the ants. Everything was alive. That you read in Tolkien how much time he spends talking about the landscape, the skyscape, everything. And I would agree with that. So I would agree with Gerrie that for me, and The Hobbit, wait, he published that in 1937. That was the first book.
Yeah.
I think his children wanted to read him stories, and so he started to write them down. And he and the publisher were convinced nobody would read it, that maybe we won't lose, Allen and Unwin. We won't lose too much money. Very much like with George Lucas and Star Wars. Okay, well, let's do it, but been there, done that. We won't lose too much money. The rest is history. I would agree, Tolkien, yes. And since he wrote The Hobbit first, I read the whole thing. We have 2 girls. Now they're 29 and 30. And I read them when they were young, the whole book, little by little, as bedtime stories. I would do it again. I regularly reading Tolkien, and I have a couple of editions, and one I date on each page when I read it. I make notes to myself, and then I can see as I go round and round and round the next time I came to that page again. Yes, I would agree, Tolkien, The Hobbit, absolutely, for myself.
Well, on that note, we're running out of time for today. As I say, cheap, cheerful, brief, and to the point, I'd like to thank each one of you for taking time out of your precious day for helping make the world a slightly happier place, I hope, and giving your recommendations for Yule, for Hanukkah, for Christmas. I can't remember the Muslim holiday at this time, but I know there is a winter holiday as well. My blessings and love to you all. I'll get this posted as soon as I can. Our next Art of Liberty will be in January. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody who's watching this.
And you,
And you,
David.
David, everybody else.
The same to you.
Yeah.
Look
Thank
forward
you
to
very
seeing
much. Happy Christmas.
you.
Bye.
Happy Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Christmas.